Today, I'd like to walk you through several examples of how to solve special right triangles. I'm going to take you through a couple of the same types of examples simply so that you can see how to deal with radicals, how to deal with fractions, and how to deal with some of the possible variations that you're going to encounter. If you're trying to solve a 45, 45, 90 triangle, I tell my students to think about the proportions of the sides. A 45, 45, 90, the legs will always be the same, and the hypotenuse is square root of 2 times whatever the value of the leg is. So if I'm given a leg, I automatically know the answer for the other leg. And to get from a leg to the hypotenuse, I simply multiply by the square root of 2. In this example, you'll see they've given us the hypotenuse. Again, if I think about the proportion of my legs and my hypotenuse, it's 1 square root of 2. So if I was given a leg and I wanted to move to the hypotenuse, I multiplied by the square root of 2. But if I'm given the hypotenuse and I want to move back to one of my legs, I'm going to divide by the square root of 2. So if I take 7 square root of 2 and I divide by the square root of 2, my square root of 2's are going to cancel, and my legs are 7. I'm going to do one of each type one more time, just so you can get the hang of this. If I'm given a leg, I automatically know the other leg, 5 square root of 2. If I want to move from a leg to the hypotenuse, I'm going to multiply by the square root of 2. It's important to remember your rules for radicals. I can only multiply the inside number times the inside number, and this outside number times the outside number. So 5 times 1 is 5, and square root of 2 times square root of 2 is square root of 4. Square root of 4 is a perfect square, and so I have an answer for that, and the radical goes away. 5 times 2 is 10, so my hypotenuse is 10. Let's do one more example where you're given the hypotenuse. When you're given the hypotenuse and you want to return to the leg, this time you're going to divide by the square root of 2. So if I take 3 square root of 6 and divide by square root of 2, I am allowed to cancel or reduce these inside numbers. 2 goes into 6 3 times. So the answer is 3 square root of 3. And since my legs are the same, it's 3 square root of 3 for both of them. Now let's do a few examples of 30, 60, 90. Again, I would definitely use the proportions in order to solve these. The proportions for a 30, 60, 90 tell me that the short side, the side across from the 30, is going to be a 1. To get from this side to the hypotenuse, I'm going to double it. To get from the 30 to the side across from the 60, I'll multiply by the square root of 3. If the value they have given you happens to be the side across from the 30-degree angle, then you are in luck. This is the easiest one to solve for. If I am leaving this side, I multiply to go to either one of these sides. So what do I multiply by? Just like I said before, if I want to go to the hypotenuse, I multiply by 2. If I want to go to the side across from the 60, I multiply by the square root of 3. So I'll double the 4 to get the value of my hypotenuse, and I'll multiply by square root of 3 to get the side across from the 60. Let's do this one more time. I always encourage my students to sketch out the triangle so that it is set up the same way as the triangle they're trying to solve. Find the 30 and put your 1 across from that angle. The hypotenuse will always be your 2, and that leaves your square root of 3 as your side across from the 60. Now I can see exactly what they've given me. They gave me the side across from the 30. If I want to go to the hypotenuse, I'm going to multiply by 2. When I multiply 9 over 2 by 2, I get 18 over 2, which reduces to 9. If I want to go to the side across from the 60, I'll multiply by the square root of 3. Remember, when you're multiplying a fraction times a whole number, or in this case, a radical, think of that radical as over 1, so that you're multiplying the correct part. 9 square root of 3 over 2. So what if they give me a different side? Like this example. Again, I would recommend that you sketch out your 30, 60, 90 triangle so you can see what you were given and where you're headed. The side across from the 30 will be your 1, your hypotenuse is 2, and the side across from the 60 is your square root of 3. They've given me this side right here. Anytime they give you a side other than the side across from the 30, I always tell my students, return home. Think of the side across from the 30 as home base. Anytime you are returning home, you need to divide. What are you going to divide by? Whatever the proportion of your side is. So I'm going to divide by the square root of 3. 5 square root of 3 divided by square root of 3 is 5. Once you're back home, it's easy to go anywhere that you need to go. I can go to the hypotenuse by multiplying by 2. So when you leave the 30, you multiply. When you return to the 30, you divide. So my hypotenuse is 10. Let's do this one more time. Again, sketch out your triangle so that you can see where you are and where you're headed. This time they labeled the 60, but I always want to label the 30 and put the 1 across from it. This will be my 2, and this will be my square root of 3. So they gave me this side. Like I said before, return home. If you're going back to the 30, divide. So I'll divide by the square root of 3. If I do 7 divided by the square root of 3, I have an improper fraction. I cannot have a radical in the denominator. I need to rationalize it. I'll multiply both the denominator and numerator by the square root of 3. That gives me 7 square root of 3 over 3. Now that I'm back on my short side, I can go to the hypotenuse by doubling this number. Here's something else you need to remember. When you're doubling a fraction, you are multiplying times the top, but you can only multiply the 2 times the 7. It is not going to apply to the number that's inside of the radical. So my answer for my hypotenuse is 14 square root of 3 over 3. Now let's look at 2 examples where you're given the hypotenuse. Again, let's sketch out our triangle so we can see where we are and where we're headed. Whoops. So, put the 1 across from the 30, the 2 across from the hypotenuse, and the square root of 3 across from the 60. They've given me the hypotenuse. Like I said before, let's return home. Let's go back to home base, which is across from the 30. To return, we always divide. What are we going to divide by this time? The 2. That makes my short side a 5. Now, to leave the side across from the 30, let's multiply by square root of 3. Let's do this one more time just to make sure you got the hang of it. Again, sketch out the triangle so you can do a comparison. I set it up 1, 2, square root of 3. They've given me the hypotenuse, and I need to return to the side across from the 30. To return home, I divide. Divide by 2. If I take 6 square root of 5 and I divide by 2, I can cancel these outside numbers. 2 will divide into 6 3 times. Once I am back at the side across from the 30, I can go anywhere that I need to through multiplication. I'll head over here and multiply by the square root of 3. That gives me 3 square root of 15. If this number was larger, I would break it down and see if there was anything that could come out of my radical. Always make sure you're in simplest form. This is in simplest form, so I can stop here. In this final example, I'd like to look at a problem where you have a combination of a 45-45 and a 30-60-90 triangle. The instructions tell me that they want me to find all missing sides. So even though this X is labeled, we're going to find every piece that is missing. I'll start with the 45-45 because they've given me the hypotenuse. Now remember the rule. If they've given me the hypotenuse and I want to return to the side, that's when I'm going to divide. What am I dividing by? The square root of 2. If I take 6 and divide by the square root of 2, it's improper. I need to rationalize by multiplying both the numerator and denominator by square root of 2. That gives me 6 square root of 2 over 2, but that's still not in simplest form. The 2 divides into the 6 3 times. So both legs of my 45-45 are 3 square root of 2. Now that I have the short side of my 30-60-90, I can go to either place through multiplication. I can go to the hypotenuse by multiplying by 2. That gives me 6 square root of 2. Or I can go to the side across from the 60 by multiplying by the square root of 3. So this side is 3 square root of 6.